Ever look back and think, how on earth did we get away with playing with that? From radioactive science kits to plastic bubbles that stank of chemicals, the so-called toys of the past were often more dangerous than delightful. Sure, they kept us entertained, but they also sent more than a few kids to A&E. From flying dolls to clacking balls to lawn darts that could have taken someone's eye out, this is 15 dangerous toys British kids actually played with. Imagine opening your cereal box and finding not a sticker or a toy car, but a piece of radioactive memorabilia. In the early 1950s, children in Britain and America were offered the Lone Ranger atomic bomb ring through promotions. It sounded thrilling, a ring with a built-in secret atomic effect. What it really contained was a small supply of radioactive material designed to create a glow-in-the-dark feature. While it didn't pack enough punch to level a playground, the very idea of children wearing something radioactive on their fingers is absurd by today's standards. At the time, there was little understanding of long-term radiation risks, and atomic was a buzzword of the age. Looking back, it's hard to believe parents thought this was harmless fun. It might have looked like a cool cowboy trinket, but it's now remembered as one of the most irresponsible toys ever produced. Not every dangerous toy looked threatening at first glance. In fact, the Snacktime Cabbage Patch Kid looked downright cuddly until it decided to eat your hair. Released in the mid-1990s, this doll had a motorized mouth designed to chew plastic food accessories. The trouble was, it couldn't tell the difference between a toy chip and a child's ponytail. Kids would lean too close and suddenly find the doll yanking in strands of hair or even fingers, with no off switch to stop it. The only way to release what it had gripped was to dismantle the doll. Parents were horrified, and after numerous injury reports, Mattel was forced to pull the toy from shelves. While the Cabbage Patch brand itself remains iconic, the Snacktime edition has gone down in history as a toy that literally couldn't stop eating, and not in a cute way. Few toys managed to be both a fire hazard and nightmare fuel, but the Jolly Chimp pulled it off effortlessly. Popular from the 1960s through the 80s, this battery-operated monkey toy clashed its cymbals together, bared its teeth, and rolled its eyes in an unsettlingly manic fashion. Children may have found it amusing, but many adults considered it downright creepy. Beyond the unsettling appearance, the Jolly Chimp had genuine safety issues. The battery compartments in some versions were poorly insulated, creating a risk of overheating and electrical faults. Add in sharp edges and fragile parts, and you had a toy that could just as easily frighten as injure. The monkey became infamous enough to appear in films and TV as a symbol of eerie childhood nostalgia. Today, the Jolly Chimp is remembered less as an innocent plaything and more as a disturbing relic of a time when toy safety standards were far looser than they are now. At first glance, this toy seemed like the perfect festive stocking filler. The Christmas mouse was a cuddly talking toy that played up the holiday charm. With one bizarre twist, its voice chip couldn't quite get the words right. Instead of cheerful Christmas greetings, the mouse often spat out phrases that sounded more offensive than festive, leaving parents horrified. Beyond its embarrassing mispronunciations, the toy also came with concerns about the cheaply made electronics inside. Reports surfaced of batteries overheating or corroding, which could pose a risk to children. While not as overtly dangerous as darts or chemistry sets, it became infamous in Britain for spoiling family holidays with its accidental rudeness. Parents quickly learned that buying a talking toy didn't guarantee joy around the tree. Today, it's mostly remembered with laughter, but back then, the Christmas mouse was anything but a merry companion. One of the most deceptively dangerous toys of the 1990s was the Sky Dancer. On paper, it sounded magical, a fairy doll that launched into the air with the pull of a string. In practice, these dolls spun wildly out of control and crash-landed into children's faces, eyes, or even fireplaces. Hundreds of injuries were reported, ranging from bruises to broken teeth, and eye damage. Despite the dangers, sky dancers were massively popular across Britain, with adverts making them look like harmless fun. The problem lay in their unpredictable flight paths. Once launched, there was no telling where they'd go. Eventually, after mounting complaints, manufacturers issued recalls and warnings. For many who grew up in the 90s, the Sky Dancer is a bittersweet memory, a toy that really did fly, but at the cost of safety. Looking back, it's hard to imagine how they ever got approval for children in the first place. If you grew up in the 70s or 80s, chances are you remember this one. A little tube of chemical goo that promised bubbles bigger than your head. Kids would squeeze the plastic putty onto a straw and blow, creating shiny, rubbery bubbles. The fun, however, came at a cost. The stuff absolutely reeked. That's because the goo contained toxic solvents like polyvinyl acetate dissolved in acetone. Blowing up these bubbles meant inhaling harmful fumes, which could cause dizziness, headaches, and worse. On top of that, the bubbles themselves were highly flammable, so one spark could set them alight. Despite these risks, super elastic bubble plastic was wildly popular until safety regulators stepped in. Today, it's often held up as a prime example of how little attention was paid to children's health when toys were marketed. Fun in the moment, yes, but definitely not worth the damage it could do. Nothing screams the 1950s quite like giving children an actual nuclear science kit. The Gilbert U-238 Atomic Energy Lab was a short-lived educational toy that let kids play scientist at home, complete with real uranium ore samples. Marketed as a way to inspire the next generation of physicists, it came with a Geiger counter, a cloud chamber, and instruction manuals brimming with enthusiasm for the atomic age. The obvious problem, of course, was the radiation. Although the amounts were relatively small, it's mind-boggling today to imagine a child being handed radioactive materials as a plaything. Sold briefly in both the US and available in Britain, it quickly became one of the most notorious toys in history. Its hefty price tag meant few families actually owned one, but its legacy as the most dangerous science kit ever made is undeniable. These days, collectors prize it, but no parent would dare let a child near it. Sometimes the most dangerous toys weren't mechanical at all, they were psychological. Candy cigarettes were a staple of corner shops across Britain for decades, sold in brightly coloured boxes designed to mimic real cigarette brands. Children would strut around pretending to smoke, puffing out sugar dust or chewing chalky sticks. While they didn't cause physical injuries, they normalised smoking for young kids, making it seem glamorous or grown up. Public health experts slammed them as training cigarettes, and over time, the backlash grew. By the 1990s and early 2000s, many countries, including the UK, began banning or restricting them. Even now, a few variations survive as candy sticks, but without the cigarette-style packaging. Looking back, it's shocking how casually they were marketed, almost as if tobacco companies wanted to groom the next generation of smokers. They may not have broken bones, but candy cigarettes arguably caused long-term harm in a very different way. Few playground crazes took Britain by storm, quite like slap bracelets. Kids in the 1990s couldn't get enough of them. A simple strip of spring steel, covered in fabric, that snapped snugly onto your wrist with a flick. It looked harmless, and for the most part it was, until the cheap knockoffs arrived. Many of these had thin or poorly glued coverings, which quickly wore down. Underneath was a sharp-edged strip of metal that could slice skin wide open. Schools across the UK started banning them after reports of cuts and even minor infections. What began as a trendy accessory ended up on do not bring to class lists everywhere. Looking back, the concept was clever, but the execution was often shoddy. For kids, it was a fashion statement. For parents and teachers, it was just another trip to A&E waiting to happen. By the 2000s, construction toys were all the rage, and Magnetix seemed like the perfect upgrade to Lego. The sets used small magnetic balls and rods that could snap together into all sorts of structures. The trouble was the magnets weren't always secure. Children who swallowed just one might have been fine, but if two or more were ingested, they could attract inside the intestines, pinching tissue together and causing life-threatening injuries. Dozens of cases were reported worldwide, with emergency surgeries needed to save children's lives. The danger became so well known that recalls were issued and parents were urged to get rid of older sets. In Britain, Magnetix quickly went from being a Christmas favourite to a banned hazard. The irony is that the toy worked brilliantly. As designed, it just never should have been marketed to children. The risks far outweighed the reward of building magnetic towers at home. Polly Pocket might look innocent, but the Quik-Clik series of the early 2000s had a hidden danger. These sets used tiny magnetic accessories that allowed dolls to snap on clothes and click into place. The problem? The magnets weren't always secure, and when they came loose, children could swallow them without realizing. Just like with Magnetix, multiple magnets inside the body could attract through tissue, leading to perforations and blockages in the intestines. By 2006, there were widespread recalls across Britain and the US, with toy safety watchdogs warning parents to bin any older sets. What had once been a pocket-sized favourite turned into a nightmare for families caught unaware. It was a stark reminder that even toys aimed at younger children weren't free from risk, and that hidden hazards were sometimes the most dangerous of all. Today, Polly Pocket survives in safer forms, but the Quik-Clik range is firmly on the banned list. Few playground toys were as chaotic as yo balls, those liquid-filled rubber balls attached to an elastic cord and finger loop. They looked like harmless stress toys, but once you started swinging them around, things got risky. Kids used them like makeshift yo-yos, hurling them in wide arcs, only to have them bounce unpredictably back at their faces. Reports flooded in of bruises, black eyes, and even strangulation scares when the cord wrapped around children's necks. On top of that, the liquid inside wasn't exactly reassuring, with concerns it could be toxic if the toy burst. By the mid-2000s, schools and councils across Britain banned them, and trading standards stepped in to issue safety alerts. For a brief moment, yo balls were the craze every kid wanted, but their short-lived reign ended in recalls and warnings. It's a prime example of a toy that went from playground sensation to prohibited almost overnight. It's astonishing to think anyone ever thought sharp projectiles belonged in children's hands, yet lawn darts, or jarts, were exactly that. Marketed from the 1960s onwards as an outdoor family game, they consisted of heavy, metal-tipped darts meant to be tossed at ground targets. Unfortunately, they didn't always hit the grass. Thousands of injuries were recorded worldwide, with children often on the receiving end. In Britain, families brought them out at barbecues and garden parties, blissfully unaware of the risk. By the 1980s, the dangers were undeniable. Puncture wounds, head injuries, and even fatalities. Regulators finally pulled them from the shelves, but not before they'd earned a reputation as one of the deadliest toys ever sold. Nowadays, safer plastic versions exist, but anyone who remembers the original will tell you just how reckless the idea really was. Lawn darts weren't just a bad design, they were an accident waiting to happen. Every decade had its schoolyard craze, and in the 1970s, Clackers were king. 2 acrylic balls suspended on a string. The aim was to swing them up and down, so they smacked together in rhythmic clacks. Sounds simple enough, until you realised the balls could shatter mid-swing. Made from brittle plastic, Clackers often exploded into sharp shards that flew out at high speed, leaving children with cuts, bruises, or worse. Teachers quickly banned them from classrooms, but that didn't stop kids sneaking them into the playground. Beyond breakages, the sheer force of 2 hard balls colliding near your face made injuries inevitable. Despite this, Clackers were hugely popular, partly because they made such a racket, and partly because every kid wanted to master the trick. Looking back, It's amazing they were sold at all. Today they're remembered fondly, but also as one of the most notoriously unsafe playground toys Britain ever embraced. Topping the list is Bindeez, known in some markets as Aquadots, a beadcraft kit that became infamous in 2007. The idea was simple: arrange colourful beads into patterns, spray with water, and watch them fuse together. What parents didn't realise was that the beads were coated with a chemical that, when ingested, metabolised into GHB, the so-called date rape drug. Dozens of children worldwide fell seriously ill after swallowing them, with symptoms ranging from vomiting to seizures. The scandal was front-page news in Britain, and an urgent recall followed almost immediately. It wasn't just a design flaw, it was a full-blown health crisis caused by toxic manufacturing shortcuts. Bindeez was banned outright, and regulators tightened rules on imported toys. What should have been a harmless arts and crafts activity ended up as one of the most shocking toy safety disasters in recent memory, cementing its place at number 1 on this list. And that brings us to the end of our look at the dangerous toys British kids actually played with. If this trip down memory lane gave you a mix of nostalgia and disbelief, don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe for more dives into history, culture, and the everyday things that shaped our childhoods. See you in the next one.